one of the perks of where my physio is Gales, the best animal castles in London. I'm quite close, so you obviously have to. I always make sure I have at least 15 minutes, sometimes 10, but you can do it in 10 to pick it up, and a coffee.
Lying on your back there, this left leg was a little bit more tucked under and shorter, but then when you sit up, they're equaled out. So that's not a description of like the actual structural leg length being different. It's just the pelvis is not sitting completely aligned. And so once we've done all this stuff here, then we'll have a look at that again and see whether that's changed.
So why does this happen to me?
Why does this happen to you? Well, it's highly likely that the hips are driving the problem. So you've got quite an open hip pattern, and an open hip pattern means you've got a lot of range of motion, and the more range of motion, the harder it is for the muscles to control it. And muscles like this one here, so your adductors and your hip flexor, they're all muscles that help sort of stabilize the ball of the hip joint in the socket. And if they get overworked, then they can get tight. And secondary outcome of that is it actually starts to uncover the hip even more and makes the hip structurally, like the congruence of the joint, less stable. So then that means the muscles have to hold on even more, and then that cycle kind of perpetuates itself. So these muscles that are tight are driving the uncovering pattern, so you're back on this left hand side here, which is making the hip more sort of functionally unstable or harder to control. That's why you've got more hip internal rotation on this left hand side where you did before we started treating you than you do on the right hand side. And that's not the bony shape is different, it's more just the alignment is different.
With this sort of like hip pattern and with everything we need to treat, what is the sort of the management program as such, and obviously what have we been doing over the last 3 years to make sure that it is just mild symptoms and it doesn't, I guess, accelerate into anything bad?
Yeah, so your structural anatomy means that your hips are always going to be more mobile, so therefore it depends on the muscle function to control them, and so it's a balancing act of keeping the muscles like strong and like the density of the muscle sufficient and the correct muscular balance. So your back muscles are really important, your quads are really important because they're going to help improve or keep the hip coverage and stability. And also then all the sort of co-contraction of the hip stabilizers, so the rotators of the hip, adductor magnus, which we were just on a minute ago, even the hip flexors here, that they're all working well together so that the muscular control of this mobile hip is able to tolerate the demands of what you're asking it to do. Unfortunately, muscles are obviously transient to the environment we put them under, so they flux between their outputs and their shortness, and so that's the dynamic system that you have to keep an eye on.
When you become a triathlete, everything gets fatigued.
Exactly, yeah. So you're with triathlon, you're asking the hips to do quite a lot, obviously. Swimming, not so much, but there's a reasonable amount of muscle function happening with your leg kick. And then when you put them on the bike, then you're really asking the pelvis to work in a more of an unlocked position or a backward rotating position. And then you get up into running, and then you're working the pelvis in a more of an extended upright position, and the hip joint through its full range of motion, from full flexion, as when you were on the bike, then into full extension. It's that control of the end of the stance phase of running, which is the big challenge.
And that's the centration on TT bike as well, isn't it? Because there's even more rotation.
Yeah, so on TT bike you're going to be in even more flexion, so you're going to open up your pelvis even more as you have to kind of. So all this stuff now, we're loosening you off, but actually the problem is that you have a hip that's hard to control, or a hip that is unstable, I'd say loosely. Yeah.
Mostly because it's unstable.
So this is definitely is a management strategy. It's not a solution. We're sort of helping the muscles that have got tight as a consequence of the hip being hard to control, helping them loosen off and normalise, but actually,
you still need them, right?
You need the muscle function to be there, and the balance of the different muscles to be working really well together. And so it's just kind of these ebbs and flow of like really push with the rehab or conditioning to strengthen the muscle up, which might cause some level of tightening of it. So then you have to loosen it off, try and normalise it a bit, and then you have it in a better position to then push on again. The principle is that you have to have the muscular control around the hip, otherwise you won't be able to control it. And then you might overload the joint, which is what happened with the right hip.
And then I get that hyperinflammation.
And then you get the joint overload. So this is not a joint overload, this is muscular imbalance around the pelvis.
And then it's like catching it early. Oh Christ! It's supposed to be the better side right now.
Tight in there.
Yeah. It's all those abductor things that I've been doing, she says. Well, I haven't been.
Yeah, I think this is just really a summation of working your hip flexors and working your adductors a lot to get hip stability. But if they get really tight and overwork, they will cause a bit of an uncovering pattern.
But you need, is that like, you need
the muscular.